Perfecting the happiness formula. I first want to start out with a quick survey. Please raise your hand if you feel that money has an impact on your well-being and happiness. Okay, pretty much everyone. And that's expected. Now, you probably heard the famous saying, money can't buy happiness, and it's 100% true. Now, even though money can make you awfully comfortable while you're miserable, there are also other factors that influence our happiness. We might be happy for now, but for the long run, most of us are actually not going to be happy. Let me explain. What makes us happy? To measure the nation's well-being, YouGov asked a panel of Americans about who or what had the greatest impact on their well-being. Looking at this graph, 32% of the respondents said that money had the biggest impact on their well-being. Now, as I said before, money can't buy happiness. It only buys immediate satisfaction, not long-term happiness. So, in a very famous study, Dr. Philip Brickman tested the happiness levels of two different groups, one of lottery winners and the other of car accident victims. Now, you might think there would be a major difference in happiness levels between these two groups, but there really wasn't, because even though both groups had life-changing events, they returned to this set level of happiness after a couple of months. This graph is a common perception on how happiness works. So through a quick analysis, we can see that as income goes up, happiness goes up. As I said before, happiness can't buy long-term happiness. Income can't buy long-term happiness. 90% of long-term happiness is predicted by the way you perceive the world. So in other words, if you have a positive mindset or you look at the world in a positive way, you can actually be happier. 75% of job successes are not dependent on IQ or intelligence, but rather levels of optimism, social support, and by seeing stress as a challenge rather than a threat. In 2004, a Harvard Crimson poll found that as many as 4 out of 5 Harvard students suffer from depression at least once during the school year. This is a pretty alarming statistic because it shows that most Harvard students are unhappy and stressed. Even though goals and expectations are high at Harvard, students should be able to have a rewarding and enjoyable experience every step of the way. However, this stat shows that most students didn't feel this way and their goals were set too high and unmanageable. Let's look at another perspective. Marla Runyan is a 5-time Olympic gold medalist. She finished the New York Marathon in about 2 hours and a half. And she's also represented the US team for track and field. And more importantly, she's legally blind. What makes Marla's story so important and so inspiring is her ability to see her disability, blindness, as a weapon. She used it as her motivation. As I said before, by seeing stress as a challenge rather than a threat, you can become successful. In this case, Marla was successful on the track by seeing her disability, blindness, as a weapon and something to motivate her. The idea to have a positive mindset or look at the world in a positive way is known as positive psychology. Martin Selinger is known as the father of positive psychology. For years, Selinger believes that psychologists have focused too much on mental illnesses, depression, and disorder, rather than nurturing talent and improving normal life. With the work of more popular psychologists like Sean Atcher and Dan Gilbert, positive psychology is becoming the world's next innovative tool. Today I'm going to talk about 3 different principles in positive psychology which I find most intriguing and which can perfect the happiness formula. So first, the Tetris effect. For those who don't know, Tetris was a popular game about 10 to 15 years ago, and it's a game of patterns. It's pretty addictive as well. Since it's a game of patterns, it started to influence people in their daily life. So for instance, when going to a grocery store, an active Tetris player would start to see patterns with the way cereal boxes were stacked. And this is only one example. In positive psychology, the Tetris effect emphasizes that we should look for opportunities, improvements, and in general have a positive outlook on the world, because our world has some negative patterns. So most of the news we watch, or should I say fake news we watch today, shows negative aspects of life. So instead of looking at the positive aspects or positive news in the world, we're really looking at the atrocities of war, domestic violence, and more recently, government corruption. Even though it's important to know and be aware of current events and issues in the world, we need to shed light on the positive news, because negative news actually has a negative impact on our mental health. Psychologist Dr. Graham Davies states that exposure to violent media or negative news can lead to stress, depression, and disorder. And in general, just watching negative news will make you less happy. The Zora Circle. Now, this is the second principle I'm going to be talking about. The idea behind the Zora Circle is manageable goals. As I said before with the Harvard study, people tend to set their goals too high and it becomes unmanageable. The Zora Circle emphasizes the idea that our goals should be small and they should be achievable, because by setting goals or having small goals and achieving them one step at a time, we can get closer and closer towards our long-term goals. When our goals are set too high or they're just too big, our emotions take over. And since our brain works in a logical manner, our emotions tend to decrease our performance and in general just hurt our normal life. So, as author Robert Collier once said, success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. So, instead of looking for the long term and looking to achieve something in the far future, by being happy and satisfied with your efforts in one day, working towards that long-term goal, overall you can be happier with your life. And lastly, social investment. So the idea behind social investment is to have a supportive group around you. This can be with friends or family, but whatever it is, you should have people that care about you, and you should look to make constant interactions with people around you. Now, in our society today, we tend to resort towards social media in order to make interactions with others, and it really doesn't have an impact on our social well-being. In a very famous study, researchers found that people who spend more than 2 hours a day on social media have twice the odds for perceived social isolation in comparison to those who spend less than 30 minutes a day. The idea that happiness drives success, not the other way around, is known as the happiness advantage. The happiness advantage also stresses that we should have positive outlook and positive view on the world because our world is too negative. Since the brain is an organ, but it functions as a muscle, we can actually rewire or change the shape of the brain and its patterns. And we can do this in 3 ways. First, meditation. Second, acts of kindness. And third, by exercising strengths. Meditation. So meditation is a tool in order to alleviate stress and really find a sense of inner peace in the world. Most of us are plagued by problems and issues in our daily life, and meditation helps us get rid of it. Well, not get rid of those, but accept those and look more positively on the world. Second, random acts of kindness. Now, as my mom likes to say, and she used to say all the time, by smiling, if you smile at the world, you can smile. If you smile at the world will smile back at you. So you can either donate to charity or put the needs of others before yourself, but in general, helping others can make yourself happier. And lastly, exercise strengths. Now, we all know that if we improve at a certain hobby or sport, we'll just be happier in general. We can improve our self-esteem, and these tend to be the types of things that are our long-term goals. The idea that over time we get better at a skill or hobby is known as the saying, it's practice makes perfect, and it's completely false. We imagine to have results like this, where over time our skill improves, but it's more like this. This is really how we're able to process a skill or activity. The biggest difference between these two graphs is the plateau stage. It's where we stay at the same level and where people tend to give up because they don't see any improvement. But by learning how to get through these stages, we can actually become more successful in life. In conclusion, happiness is the hidden neurochemical which drives success. We need to get rid of the idea that we have to wait for success and therefore wait for happiness, because happiness should be on all sides of the equation. And by doing this, we can create a better and more positive world. Thank you.